Napoleon Bonaparte never set foot in Brazil, but his wars in Europe changed the course of its history. Because of his campaigns and the invasion of the Iberian Peninsula, the Portuguese royal family fled to Rio de Janeiro, turning the colony into the heart of an empire. And without that flight, perhaps Brazil would only have gained independence much later. Today, we'll understand how Napoleon helped, without even intending to, in the birth of independent Brazil. In the late 18th century, after the French Revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte emerged as a military genius. Between 1803 and 1815, he led the so-called Napoleonic Wars, facing practically every major European power. With stunning victories, such as at Austerlitz in 1805, Napoleon came to dominate much of continental Europe. But there was one enemy he could not defeat: Britain. The British Navy destroyed the Franco-Spanish fleet at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, securing control of the seas. To try to defeat Britain another way, Napoleon decreed the Continental Blockade in 1806. No European country could trade with Britain. Portugal faced an impossible choice: obey Napoleon and cut ties with Britain, its greatest trading partner, or resist and face French fury. Prince Regent Dom João tried to buy time, but in the end decided to maintain the alliance with Britain. Napoleon did not forgive. In 1807, he ordered the invasion of the Iberian Peninsula to punish Portugal. French troops under Junot entered Portugal in November 1807. At the same time, Napoleon took advantage of Spain's weakness to place his brother Joseph Bonaparte on the Spanish throne. The result was chaos in the peninsula. Spain and Portugal occupied, populations in revolt, and a brutal conflict that would become known as the Peninsular War, 1807 to 1814. This war consumed enormous resources from the Napoleonic Empire and became one of the main factors in its downfall. But even before French troops reached Lisbon, the Portuguese court had already made its boldest decision: to transfer itself to Brazil. On November 27, 1807, escorted by the British Navy, the royal family embarked for Rio de Janeiro. More than 10,000 people crossed the Atlantic. In January 1808, the court disembarked, and for the first time in history, a colony became the seat of a European empire. In Rio, Dom João VI transformed the city. He founded institutions such as the Bank of Brazil, the Royal Press, the National Library, and military academies. The most decisive step came in 1808, with the opening of the ports to friendly nations, breaking Portugal's old trade monopoly. In 1815, Brazil was elevated to the status of United Kingdom of Portugal, Brazil, and the Algarves, ceasing to be formally a colony. Meanwhile, in Europe, Napoleon was facing defeats. In 1814, he was forced to abdicate and was sent to the island of Elba. In 1815, he briefly returned during the 100 Days, but after his final defeat at Waterloo, he was exiled to St. Helena, where he died in 1821. After Napoleon's fall, things in Portugal were far from calm. A liberal revolution, the Revolution of Porto, broke out in 1820. The revolutionaries demanded the return of Dom João VI and the recolonization of Brazil. Dom João yielded to the pressure and returned, but left his son, Dom Pedro, as Prince Regent in Brazil. The Portuguese Cortes, afraid of losing Brazil, began sending orders that restricted Dom Pedro's power. The Brazilian elite, unwilling to give up the autonomy it had gained, began to pressure him. With the support of Princess Leopoldina and José Bonifacio, Dom Pedro refused to return to Portugal and on September 7th, 1822, on the banks of the Ipiranga stream, declared Brazil's independence. Napoleon never dreamed of helping Brazil, but in trying to suffocate Britain and conquer Portugal, he triggered the greatest turning point in Brazilian history. It was his invasion that brought the Portuguese court here, elevated Brazil from colony to kingdom, and paved the way for independence. In a sense, we can say, without Napoleon, there would be no independent Brazil in 1822.